James, are we ready? Yeah. Declarations of interest, first of all. And your declaration of interest, Lacey, as well.
Resident of item 10. Not in the ward, but I'm resident in the ward, but it's not my ward.
Is advice, Emma?
No, that's fine to declare.
It's fine just to declare it, okay. Apologies for absence, James.
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Starling and Councillor Tovell, and Councillor Starling's substitute is Councillor Thomas.
Minutes of the last meeting, 23rd of July. Would anybody like to comment on the accuracy of those minutes before we move on to matters arising? Are we content to say that they are accurate? Yes? Matters arising then. Stunned by the silence. Right, okay. Chairman's announcement then. Well, I don't have any announcements to make, except I'm delighted to be here. So I look forward to chairing you successfully, and I promise I will not be partisan. Just like Keir Starmer said in the Rose Garden this afternoon. Any public speaking?
There's no public speaking.
Right, well, we move straight into Cabinet reports then. So, Hannah? Yes. You're going to tell us all about the complaints policy.
I am, thank you. So the report in front of you details the revised complaints policy, which has been updated in line with the new Housing Ombudsman and Local Government Ombudsman Complaint Handling Code. Both Ombudsmen released new complaint handling code in 2024, and whilst they released separate codes, they were largely aligned. The Housing Ombudsman Complaint Handling Code became statutory from the 1st of April 2024, and a new complaint handling policy was implemented from this point. We'd now like to have a singular complaints policy, which takes all the guidance from both codes into account so we can handle complaints consistently. The purpose of the complaints policy is to outline the governance and structure of how we handle complaints corporately. And I've included a table in the report that highlights the key changes between the existing policy and the revised policy. Main changes being we're now defining a service request. We are including some exclusions to help the complainant go down the right route, so where there might be a process for appeal. We've changed working days from 15 days at stage 1 to 10 and 15 at stage 2 to 20, again on recommendation of the Ombudsman. And we're changing the complaint handling responsibility, and we're going to be introducing a self-assessment which will be going to audit yearly in March. And the process and guidance that sits behind the policy will be updated to reflect any changes, and all staff will receive relevant training. And I'll stop there for any questions.
Questions or comments?
Thank you. Nearly 99.9% of the policy is great. It's just one aspect that I find that I'm having difficulty with, and that's where there's been an amendment changed from apologising if appropriate to just apologise. And the one word apologise, you could read all sorts of things into that. So, for example, I'm sorry you feel we didn't deliver a good enough service. It's not necessarily an apology, but I'm sorry we didn't deliver a good enough service, would be. So the word apologise by itself just seems to be open to interpretation. What do you feel? Is there room to just expand on that, just that one word?
Yeah, so I think the word apologising has come directly from the Ombudsman, so that is wording that they've recommended go into the policy. I think we would outline that in training to expand on that apology point. More apologising for someone has had to make the complaint, not necessarily apologising when something hasn't gone wrong, if that makes sense.
Sorry, and does that would that explanation also go to the person who's making the complaint, so they understand how it's being processed?
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, as you say, this needed updating, so that's fine. There were just a couple of things really I wanted to point out. Obviously, as it's scrutiny here, I just wondered, it's probably easier to look on page 23 actually, when they're talking about exclusions here. On it's bullet point 4, it says matters that have previously been considered under the complaints policy. Shouldn't that be capitalised because we're talking about the complaints policy? Yeah, and also the following line, because this is a policy as well, the unreasonably persistent complaints policy. So that would be all capitalised as well. Yeah, okay, that's fine. And actually on, where is it? Must be here somewhere. Sorry, it's on back on page 19. We refer to the complaints handling policy. Do I take it we haven't got one, but it is just the complaints policy? I don't know what it is in the other document. But I mean, I know I'm being a bit pedantic, but this is meant to be scrutiny, really. So, you know, that was it really. But the other point I wanted to ask about really was it's a final bullet point on page 23 here, as I say, which is on page 18 as well. Is we've got matters which are they're an existing right of appeal or legal remedy. These types of matters are dealt with according to the specific nature of the appeal. So we go through, but my question is, what if we get another one that we put in there? Do we have to come back here and change the policy again, or can we put, this is not an exhaustive list because there could be more in the future? That's all I was thinking about, future-proofing the policy, so that if we do have other issues like this, like housing benefit appeals, there might be something like that, you know, which we went in. So that was a question I wanted to ask really. So one, it's just, yeah, I'm being pedantic, sorry. But here, I just wondered if we could future-proof the policy by perhaps changing it slightly. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
You've obviously been chatting with Grant Nurden, who has a delightful policy of looking very carefully for any spelling errors or capitalising that should be there. I'm sure we can take note of those, but what about the specific query?
It says matters for which there's an existing right of appeal or legal remedy, and we've been quite, I guess, specific alongside those. I think they're the ones where we know there's a defined appeals process set out currently. I don't see a problem with saying, and therefore they can be, as more appeal processes come on board, as and when they do, this can be amended to reflect that. But I think that might have to be something put forward as a recommendation from committee. Not sure, but pass that over to Sinead and Emma.
Would you like to formulate that as a formal suggestion?
Yeah.
I'd like to add that to the recommendation.
I'm happy to, Chair.
Is that a problem? Would you like to make this specific point so that she can note it down?
Sorry, Chair, thank you. Yeah, if we can just put that into wording for the recommendation, so specifically which part would we like to amend and to say what?
Sorry, thank you. It's the final bullet point on exclusions here. So you write specifically around different areas that could be currently within the right of appeal or legal remedy. But all I'm saying is, like, looking to future-proof it, to say that if there are any further ones which are added, that, you know, they could be added to this list. Sorry.
Am I right in saying that that list is not meant to be exclusive?
That's my point. If it wasn't, if we just said something that's not exclusive, it could be added to. So just a line in.
So yeah, the list that we've got there is a specific list of the appeals processes that currently exist. There could always be opportunities to for new appeal processes to come on board. I think it's whether we want that flexibility within the policy or not to do that without needing an amendment to the policy to come back through to committees.
I'm not understanding what your advice is. Is your advice that we should actually put in what has been suggested as a recommendation, or you think the paper covers it as is?
So just to make a suggestion, if it was just be a small amendment just to update the policy to reflect the current list, I would suggest that would be an administrative update that officers would do to ensure that it remains up to date. It wouldn't need to come back for any future approval.
That's all I was concerned.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Bottom of page 23, it says the resident has the right to take the decision to the Ombudsman. I've never done that. I don't know if it costs, does it?
No, so as part of our complaints process, we have stage 1 and 2, and once that resident has been through the stage 1 and 2 complaints process, they have the right to escalate that to the Ombudsman if they're still not happy with our response, for the Ombudsman to then do an independent review. So there's no cost to us for them to escalate it. Oh no, there's no cost to the resident, it's a free service.
Would it be a good idea to just clarify that? Because a lot of residents might not know that.
Yeah, we can clarify that, yeah, absolutely.
There is a cost to the council because there's time in making a response to the Ombudsman.
Yes, exactly. There is time in terms of management time. However, as part of the putting things right and equally our lessons learned process, which is a wider part of the complaints process, we do always try to learn from complaints. And I think historically the amounts of appeals, and particularly those that are overturned by the Ombudsman, are extremely low. So I would say in terms of performance as an authority, that is good performance. But I'm not sure if Hannah's got anything to add in terms of those levels that end up with the Ombudsman.
Yeah, I can just add that of our 204 complaints that we received last year, 10 were escalated to the Ombudsman and only 1 was upheld. So it's low numbers.
Well, I'm just saying you could put in there that this is at no cost to the resident to go to the Ombudsman.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, when we say Ombudsman, there's 2 at the bottom of the policy here, the local government and social care and the housing. I'm assuming when we say Ombudsman, it's for the local government one we're referring to, isn't it, when it gets escalated? Is that right?
So now that we're a regulatory housing provider, those complaints that fall under that category would need to go to the Housing Ombudsman specifically, but most of our complaints are covered by the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman.
Any further questions or comments? Peter?
Thank you, Chair. Do you think we've got sufficient protection against vexatious complaints in this document?
So we've got a separate policy called the Unreasonably Persistent Complainants Policy, which would cover those complainants. I'm actually doing a separate review of that policy and we'll be bringing it back to Cabinet and Council.
Don't see any further questions or comments, so can we move to the recommendation, which you'll find on page 15 of the Cabinet report, to recommend to the Council that we adopt the revised complaints policy for the Council. Are you happy to support that? Any not happy? Right, so unanimous, I think, Chairman?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm Chairman, you're... I've now got to move to exclusion of the press and public. I've really got to read all that out, have I? Right. I move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business because otherwise information which is exempt information by virtue of paragraph 3, part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006 will be disclosed to them.